Conscription, a word that shook millions of lives, a strategy that changed the course of history forever. Introduced in January 1916, it was a law that forced 2.5 million men into the fires of World War I. The world was a different place back then. The year was 1915 and the First World War was well underway. The face of Army Chief Lord Kitchener could be seen on posters across the nation, encouraging 1 million brave souls to volunteer their lives for the war effort. But as the war raged on, the tide of volunteers began to dwindle. Casualties were mounting into the hundreds of thousands, and the country needed more men to serve. The answer was conscription, a controversial solution that was met with fierce opposition from some quarters. Nevertheless, in January 1916, the government took the drastic step of introducing conscription. From then on, men were no longer asked to serve their country, they were legally obliged to do so. The impact was immediate, and the scale was unprecedented. In the first 12 months following the introduction of conscription, an astonishing 1.1 million men signed up to serve. The age limit was even raised to 51 during the final months of the war in 1918, further expanding the pool of potential soldiers. Conscription had a profound impact on the Great War. It bolstered the ranks of the British Army and played a crucial role in the eventual victory. However, the cost was immense. By the time the war came to an end in 1918, 2.5 million men had been conscripted into service. Tragically, many of them were among the 800,000 who lost their lives for king and country. As World War I ended, the nation was left traumatized, counting the cost of a conflict that claimed the lives of 800,000 men who were forced to serve their country. The introduction of conscription marked a turning point in British history. It was a bold, controversial move that forever changed the way wars were fought. Yet despite the controversy, conscription proved to be a powerful tool in the face of a seemingly insurmountable challenge. Fast forward to 1939, the world is once again plunged into conflict. Conscription returns, but this time with a broader reach. World War II brought with it a new wave of conscription, a wave that extended beyond the borders of gender. As the war raged on, the call was not just for men, but for women too. A call that was answered by hundreds of thousands of women, ready to serve their country. The conscription of World War II was different from its predecessor. It was not limited to men aged between 18 and 41, it reached out to unmarried women and widows up to the age of 30 as well. These women were not just asked to serve, they were told to serve, and serve they did. Their roles were diverse. Some women found themselves in the Women's Royal Naval Service, affectionately known as the Wrens. Others joined the Women's Auxiliary Air Force or the Auxiliary Territorial Service. These women served in non-combatant roles, providing vital support to the war effort. But the roles women played were not limited to non-combatant ones. Some took up more dangerous roles in anti-aircraft units, facing the enemy head-on. Others served in the Air Transport Auxiliary, flying newly built planes to bases scattered across the nation. One notable woman who answered the call was none other than the future Queen Elizabeth II. She served in the Auxiliary Territorial Service after training as a mechanic. Even a princess was not exempt from the call of duty. World War II saw the conscription of women on an unprecedented scale. They answered the call, they served, and they made their mark on history. Their contributions were invaluable, their bravery undeniable. The fight against Hitler ended in 1945, but the legacy of conscription lived on. The war may have ended, but the impact of conscription, the legacy of those men and women who served, that's something that will never fade. Those who were conscripted, those who served, they left an indelible mark on history, a mark that will always be remembered. 1947, 2 years after the end of World War II. Conscription is reborn under a new name, national service. As the dust settled on the battlefields of Europe, Britain was faced with the monumental task of rebuilding a society scarred by the ravages of war. In this context, the British government made a remarkable move. It introduced national service, effectively rebranding conscription in an effort to maintain a ready and robust military force. National service was more than just a name change. It represented a shift in the societal and governmental perspective towards conscription. The idea was to foster a sense of civic duty among the younger generations, to prepare them for potential future conflicts. It was no longer about forcing individuals to fight. It was about instilling a sense of responsibility towards national defense. The National Service Act came into force in 1948, making it compulsory for all able-bodied men between the ages of 18 and 26 to serve in the armed forces for a period of 18 months. This period was later extended to 2 years in 1950 as the Cold War tensions escalated. The impact of national service on British society was profound. It touched the lives of millions of young men who were taken from their homes, their schools, or their jobs, and thrust into a world of military discipline and camaraderie. It was a significant cultural shift, one that transformed the way British society viewed its responsibilities towards national defense. But national service was not without its critics. Many saw it as a form of forced labor, an infringement on individual liberties. Yet despite the controversy, national service continued until 1960, shaping the lives of over 2 million British men. From the press gangs of the 17th and 18th centuries to national service in the 20th, conscription has been a recurring theme in British history. Whether seen as a necessary evil or an intrinsic part of national duty, it remains a testament to the lengths a nation will go to protect its people and its interests. As we delve further into the impact of conscription, let's remember the individuals whose lives were forever shaped by these policies. Conscription was more than a military strategy. It was a social phenomenon that changed the lives of millions. When the call for service rang out, it echoed through every corner of the country, reaching not only the men drafted, but also their families and communities. The impact of conscription was felt deeply on the home front. The sudden absence of fathers, husbands, brothers and sons left a void that rippled through households and neighborhoods. As the war raged on, the country was forced to adapt. Women, who were traditionally confined to domestic roles, stepped forward to fill the vacuum left by the men. They took on jobs in factories, hospitals and farms. The Women's Royal Naval Service, the Women's Auxiliary Air Force and the Auxiliary Territorial Service were born, and women found themselves serving in roles they had never imagined. Even the future Queen Elizabeth II traded her royal comforts for a mechanic's uniform. But it was not just about the jobs they took over. Women also shouldered the emotional burden of the war. They waited, hoped, prayed, and often mourned. The trauma of loss was a shared experience, a collective grief that united the nation in sorrow. Children grew up faster, their innocence lost to the realities of war. The absence of their fathers became a norm, their childhood punctuated by letters from the front and stories of heroism and sacrifice. In the aftermath of the war, society had been irrevocably altered. Women, having tasted independence and responsibility, were unwilling to return to their pre-war roles. This shift paved the way for societal change, bringing about a new perspective on gender roles and expectations. The impact of conscription was not confined to the battlefield. It reached into homes and hearts, leaving a lasting imprint on the culture and consciousness of the nation. It was a time of loss and change, of courage and resilience, of transformation and evolution. Conscription, a controversial yet pivotal aspect of British history, shaped the nation in ways few could have imagined. Fast forward to today, the echoes of conscription still resonate in the words of modern military leaders. Let's take a moment to delve into the recent comments by Army Chief General Sir Patrick Sanders. His rallying call to mobilize the nation in the face of conflict is a striking reminder of a time when conscription was the order of the day. As we delve into the annals of history, we find that conscription during the World Wars was not just about manpower. It was a call to unity, a call to duty. It was about standing up for one's nation, for the values we hold dear. In a sense, Sanders' words echo this sentiment, evoking the spirit of unity and shared responsibility that characterized those times. Yet it's important to remember that Sanders is not advocating for conscription. Rather, his choice of language is a nod to the past, a reminder of a time when the nation came together in the face of adversity. His words serve to remind us of the sacrifices made by those who were conscripted and the pivotal role they played in shaping the world as we know it. As we look to the future, the spectre of conscription looms, a reminder of a past where millions were mobilized to serve their nation. In a span of less than a century, conscription has left an indelible mark on British history. Born out of necessity during the grim days of the First World War, this controversial policy saw over 2.5 million men legally compelled to serve their king and country. Despite the fierce opposition it faced, conscription played a pivotal role in bolstering the ranks of the British forces, proving instrumental in the eventual victory in 1918. The impact of conscription went beyond the battlefield. It left a deep scar on British society, which had to grapple with the loss of so many young men. Families were left without sons, and wives were left without husbands, painting a poignant picture of the high cost of war. Today, as we hear echoes of conscription in the words of our present Army Chief, we are reminded of its significant role in our history. The prospect of mobilizing the nation harks back to a time when every citizen had a role to play in the face of national crisis. And that wraps up our discussion on the impact of conscription. If you found this video informative and thought-provoking, don't forget to hit the like button below. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to our channel for more insightful content on history, politics, and societal issues. Your support helps us continue to bring you valuable discussions like this one. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.